Welcome to Perfect Guardian, and I'll tell you the difference between covenant and promise. Although some people consider a covenant and a promise as synonymous, it is a wrong assumption because there is a difference between a covenant and a promise. First, let us define the two words. A covenant can be defined as a formal agreement between two or more parties, where they agree to do or not to do something. This word is mostly used in religious backgrounds as well. On the other hand, a promise is an assurance that one will do something or that something will happen. The main difference between a covenant and a promise is that while in a covenant both parties have clear obligations and responsibilities, in a promise this characteristic cannot be observed. Instead, in a promise, what do you mean say? Instead, in a promise, what we can observe is the active role undertaken by one party while the other remains passive. Now, through this video, let's examine the difference between these two words, covenant and promise. Now, what is covenant? Simply, a covenant can be defined as a formal agreement between two or more parties where they agree to do or not to do something. In this sense, a covenant has legal validity. However, this word is also in religions as well. For example, in Christianity, a religious covenant refers to the promise made by God to humanity. Christians consider the Bible as a covenant. When focusing on the Bible, specifically in the light of a religious covenant, it consists of various obligations between the two parties involved. It also explains the rewards and punishments that the individual is to expect if he breaks and keeps the covenant. In the religious setting, one can observe many examples for covenants. Some of these are Noahic Covenant, Abrahamic Covenant, Mosaic Covenant, Priestly Covenant, and Davidic Covenant. Now, what is promise? A promise is an assurance that one will do something or that something will happen. It usually consists of an effort made by an individual or a group of people to perform something. In life, people make numerous promises to others as well as to themselves. However, it is interesting to note that not all these promises are kept. Unlike in the case of a covenant, where there is a legal validity, a promise holds no such power. Even if the individual breaks his promise, no legal action can be taken. A promise also does not involve a lot of obligations and responsibilities from both parties, as the attention is mainly on a single party. These are the main difference between a covenant and a promise. Now, how we can define it? What is the definition? Now, a covenant in general context can be defined as a formal agreement between two or more parties where they agree to do or not to do something, whereas a covenant in religious context is a religious covenant refers to the promise made by God to humanity, whereas the promise can be defined as an assurance that one will do something or that something will happen. Now, what are the characteristics of covenant and promise, and what are the roles? In a covenant, the roles of both parties have to be active, whereas in a promise, the role of only one party is active, as the attention is mainly on a single party. Now, what are the responsibilities and obligations? A covenant, or in a covenant, both parties have clear responsibilities and obligations, whereas in the promise, responsibilities and obligations are not there for both parties, as only one party takes active role while the other remains passive. Now, I'll talk about legal validity. A covenant, being a formal agreement, has legal validity, whereas promise do not hold any legal validity. Whereas the contest is involved. The word covenant is mostly used in religious contexts, unlike the word promise. but the promise can be used in any context. So thank you. Please subscribe to my channel Perfect Guardian and give your comments.